Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome. Today we have Her Grace Preethi Vilasini Mataji to enlighten us on Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, 29th chapter. Mataji, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Please bear with me today. This will be an impromptu class. We'll start with the prayers. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramanandamaadavam Krishna Chaitanyamishwaram Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is chapter-wise summary. Canto 4, chapters 29 is what we are going to cover today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopah Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namah. This is chapter 29, and the title of chapter 29 is The Talks Between Nārada and Prācīnabarhi. So you all know Prācīnabarhi was a great king who was performing many karmakanda sacrifices. So he had arranged a lot of Kusha grass facing the eastern direction. So he came to be known as Prācīnabarhi, Barhishat, because he was performing hundreds of such sacrifices. He came to be known as Prācīnabarhishat. And since he was so entangled in this karma, Narada Muni had appeared in front of him to enlighten him and take him out of this entanglement that he was in. So, in the previous chapters, you must have heard about a peculiar analogy that Narada Muni was telling the king. He was telling about Puranjana, and then he said Puranjana meets Puranjani, and then they live in a particular city. They are the city has 9 gates, and Puranjan and Puranjani were attended by male and female friends, and there was a 5-headed serpent that was following Puranjani, and so on. So, like this, there was a big story that was mentioned, and it was an allegorical story. But our Prācīnabarhi is like us. So he didn't understand this. It was too much for him to digest. So he told Narada, the story is interesting, but I can't make anything out of it. I know you're telling me an analogy, but I'm not able to make much sense of it. And he said that he has a problem. He's not able to understand. He's not intelligent enough. And he also tells the reason for his intelligence. So he says, maybe I'm not able to understand this. Maybe I'm not smart enough. I'm not intelligent enough because of my attachment to karma. I'm very attached to karma. I want results. I want to do one activity and I want to see instant results. And I want to enjoy this world. So that's why when you're talking something very high level, esoteric, I'm not able to follow it because of my attachment to karma. So he knows the problem, and he also knows that he's not intelligent, and he knows what is stopping him from being intelligent. So we understand that when we are very entangled in our own small pleasures, small things in life, it becomes very difficult for us to give our ears to something that is transcendental. So, like this, of course, he was submissive. Prācīnabarhi was submissive, and he requested Narada to explain the characters in the analogy. So then Narada begins to explain the different characters in the allegorical story. He says Puranjana is nothing but the living entity. There's a nice painting that you can see here. Puranjana is the person. You see Narad Muni is holding a veena, and the Puranjan is the king, actually. He's there, the short guy, I believe, the one there. And Puranjani is the intelligence, that is the beautiful lady there. She's accompanied by a five-hooded serpent. And you see this picture, Narada Muni is talking to Prācīnabarhi, who's folding his palms and listening. So, and within the city, you can see a city with 9 different gates. There are many gates in the city. And in that 9 different gates city, you see Puranjan and Puranjani, they are enjoying, and they are accompanied by their attendants. And of course, there is a story in the previous chapters that one day he goes hunting and Puranjani is angry with him and so on. So you see this, he goes on a chariot, and then there is a description of the chariot in the previous chapters. So that painting is also given here. And towards the corner of this painting, you can see how this Prācīnabarhi, he was performing that sacrifice. So you can see the Yajna Kunda, and he was performing the sacrifice, and Narada Muni comes and he enlightens this Prācīnabarhi. So it's quite a nice, comprehensive painting. Anyway, so now Narada Muni, he begins to explain the characters in the analogy. He says Puranjana is the living entity, like you and me. And what are we doing? We are transmigrating according to our work into different bodies. That is based on our karma. We are taking one birth after the other. We are like that Puranjana who was described there. We go to one city after the other. And what is the city? The city is the body. And the body has, it is one body with 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth, legs, and so on. So basically, our body is the city. And who is Avijñāta? If you remember from the previous chapters, Avijñāta is the one who comes and reminds Vaidarbhi. Vaidarbhi was the Puranjana in his next birth as a woman. And this Vaidarbhi, she gets married to Malayadwaja Pandya. And Malayadwaja Pandya dies, and that's when she's lamenting. And then this Avijñāta, he comes and he reminds Vaidarbhi of her actual identity. So that Avijñāta is nothing but the super soul, who's the supreme Lord, and he's the eternal friend of all the living entities, jivas. Since the jiva cannot realize the Lord by material names, activities, or qualities, generally this Avijñāta remains unknown. It is very difficult for us in our conditioned state to realize the Paramatma. But then, but the Paramatma is the ever well-wishing friend of ours. So that's why it's called as Avijñāta. That means he remains unknown. But then, if we make some attempt, if we look towards him, he will also look towards us and give us instructions. Then the 9 gates of the city is, of course, the body with the 9 holes. And he's this jiva who's inside this body is enjoying through these senses that function through the 9 gates, like our eyes, nose, ears, and so on. Puranjani, she is the material intelligence, and material intelligence is not like spiritual intelligence, so it is identified with ignorance. And what happens with material intelligence? You get into these conceptions of I and mine, aham mameti. And once we have that ignorance, the covering of ignorance on us, then we start enjoying in this material world. We are entrapped in the body and we enjoy with our senses. Then this Puranjani, she had male and female friends, right? So the male friends are the 10 senses, this Puranjan and Puranjani. So the 10 senses are the Jnanendriyas and the Karmendriyas, 5 Jnanendriyas, 5 Karmendriyas. Female friends are the action of the Jnanendriya and Karmendriya, like tasting, hearing, smelling, and so on. The serpent with the 5 hooves that was accompanying this Puranjani is the life air, because the intelligence and the life air, they go hand in hand. And these are the 5 life airs, which is, 5 airs that pass through our body. Prana, Apana, Udana, Vyana, and Samana. They move in different directions. Prana is the incoming, Apana is the outgoing from below, Udana, Vyana, Samana. These are all the airs that balance our body. And then there was the 11th attender, who was the commander of all the others, and that is the mind. And he's the leader of the 10 senses. We say mind is the 10th sense, right? So that 11th sense, sorry. So that 11th attendant is nothing but the mind. And the Panchala states are the 5 sense objects within this kingdom, kingdom that he is living in. So this intelligence is the queen, and she creates different situations for the jiva, both in the dreaming and wakeful state. That is the role of the intelligence of the queen. And the 9 gates with the body is compared to a chariot in the previous chapters. And we see that Chandavega was attacking the city of 9 gates, if you remember. There's a chariot, the chariot analogy is the mind, senses, and intelligence, and so on. This body is consisting of 9 gates. This Chandavega was attacking that body of 9 gates in one of the previous chapters we saw. Who is this Chandavega? Chandavega is that old age. And he's coming with his entourage, and he attacks his daughter and all of them. They all come, Jwara, all of that is there. They come and they attack the person, and he dies eventually. So, although this person, this jiva, is transcendental to material existence, still under the covering of this ignorance, he accepts miseries. He accepts this miserable life because he's entangled in this idea of I and mine. So, like this, he lives for 100 years in the body till Chandavega, Prajwara, and all of them come and attack, and the body is given up. But then he doesn't stop there. He moves from one body to the other. Why? Because he's covered by ignorance. And why does he take on this ignorance? It is because of the misuse of the minute independence he has. He associates with the modes of material nature. He misuses his independence. He forgets his identity. He forgets that he's spirit soul and he is the part and parcel of the Lord. Instead, he's identifying with the body and he's wandering from one body to the other. So this is the cycle that the jiva is going through, one body to the other. And depending on the modes that he has acquired, whether he's predominantly in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance, he goes to different places within this universe. If he's predominantly in the mode of goodness, he goes to heaven. If he's predominantly in the mode of passion, he's engaged in all kinds of laborious activities like human beings. And if he's in the mode of ignorance, of course, he gets into the animal kingdom. So like this, he might also receive different bodies like male, female, being a eunuch, animal, demigod, and so on, depending on his karma and desires. So like this, he's transmigrating from one body to the other, even after death. So this is the explanation of how this Puranjana became Vaidarbi, how this Puranjana became a woman in the next life. So just like how a dog may receive some food, or sometimes the dog may receive some good treatment, similarly, this person who's transmigrating from one body to the other also receives different fates based on the body he acquires and based on whichever planetary system he's put into. So as he's going through all these different bodies, all his attempts to counteract the threefold miseries are going futile, because the nature of this material world is to give you misery. And once you are in this material world, there is no escape. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam, right? So he's trying hard that somehow or the other I should counteract these three folds of misery, but his attempts are getting futile. And the nature of this world and the jiva trapped in this world is actually described by this very, very beautiful verse. It says, Yata hi purusho bharam shirasa gurumudvahan tam skandena sa adhatte tata sarva prakriti kriyaha. So what happens? This person who is entrapped in a body, he's always facing problems in this material world. But then he tries to make the situation better by gaining some temporary relief. Like, for example, if it's very hot in the summer, we switch on the AC. But then after some time, it gets very cold. Then we are picking a blanket. We're trying to use a blanket to make ourselves warm. Then after 1 hour, we are sweating. Again, we're taking off the blanket. This happens with me every night when I go to bed. So this is the nature of this world. We're just transferring that burden from one shoulder to the other, but the burden is not going. So as we are going through different bodies, we are having so many issues, but we get some temporary relief here and there. And this analogy is given in Srimad Bhagavatam that it is like a porter who's carrying some weight. After some time, if one of his shoulder is paining, he just moves that weight to another shoulder. So it's like that. Or sometimes he's putting it on his head, and if he's finding it difficult, he's moving it to his back. Like that. That is the nature of this material world. But actually, there is no solution to all the problems that we are having. But then Narada Muni, he says, still, though we are trying to juggle like this, there is actually one particular solution. And Narada gives that solution to Prācīnabarhi. And he says the actual solution to this problem is bhakti. So you can counteract a, so he says, can you really counteract a troublesome dream with hallucination? It is not possible, right? What is the solution then? You only have to wake up. Supposing you're sleeping and you're dreaming, and the dream is very, very scary. You cannot get rid of the dream by hallucinating, getting into a kind of a hallucination and imagination. What is the solution for a troublesome dream? You have to wake up, then you'll get rid of the dream. Similarly, he's telling this Prācīnabarhi, you're simply performing karma over and over. See, all these years you're performing karma, but is your problem getting solved? It is not getting solved. To counteract one problem, you're performing a new karma. To counteract the new problem that has come out of that karma, you're doing one more karma. So the solution for a troublesome dream is not a hallucination. Rather, you must awaken. You just should not keep doing this karma kanda over and over. You awaken to Krishna consciousness. So that is the way we stop samsara. You perform bhakti and you accept the process of bhakti through one's guru. That way you can get detached from this world and develop real knowledge. So we have to hear about Krishna, we have to see about Krishna and develop a relationship about Krishna through the medium of a guru. And that is the only solution for the problems in this material world. And then he says, you might be thinking, oh, how will bhakti descend on me, in a person like me? For that, you should take association of pure devotees, because bhakti is always there in the hearts of pure devotees. So take association of pure devotees, hear and chant the glories of the Lord with these pure devotees, and then automatically bhakti will dawn unto you. Narada says, if you eagerly hear about Krishna, if you're chanting about Krishna, if you're glorifying Krishna, you will not feel the hunger and thirst and lamentation and illusion of this material world. You know the story of how Parikshit Maharaj and Shukdev Goswami. Shukdev Goswami kept talking, Parikshit Maharaj kept listening. Parikshit Maharaj was not even tormented by hunger and thirst. Similarly, when we also hear about Krishna, this hunger, what is hunger and thirst of this material world? It is the lamentation and illusion. So we will not get entangled in this lamentation and illusion. That way you will become fully Krishna conscious. But we should do it in the association of devotees, because only devotees can guide us. If we do Nirjan Bhajan all the time, but there's a high possibility that you will get disturbed by hunger and thirst and the needs of the body, because the nature of the mind is always that it will draw us towards sense gratification. That is the nature of the mind. But then if you have the association of devotees, the devotees will help you transcend that. So Narada, he decides to end the Prācīnabarhi's continuous rituals, because Prācīnabarhi kept doing so many rituals, right? So this Narada Muni, he says, see, Brahma, Shiva, myself, the Kumaras, We are all knowledgeable. We are all very great, knowledgeable people, and we are doing austerities and meditation. But we do not see the Lord directly. That means just by acquiring knowledge, you don't see the Lord directly. Karmis also, they don't know the Lord. Though they are doing all these Vedic rituals and all, still they are unable to understand the Lord. But however, devotees know the Lord by engaging in devotional service. Actually, Narada Muni is very humble in saying this. It's not that Narada Muni is a jnani and he doesn't know Krishna, but he is putting himself in the shoes of a jnani and he's telling basically jnanis and karmis, it is difficult for them to know Krishna, but a devotee is the one who knows Krishna because he's engaging in devotional service. And so the supreme activity for pleasing Lord Haritoshanam is what? To perform devotional service. We should take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, who's the super soul. He's the supreme mother and father, and he indeed is the shelter of all. So when you do this devotional service, the result of this devotional service is fearlessness. A devotee is fearless. Why? Because he has taken complete shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. And he knows the secret that this world is non-different from Krishna. That means he's seeing Krishna everywhere. Such a person becomes really fearless. So at this point, Prācīnabarhi, he was very happy hearing all these instructions, and he was thinking, I was doing karma and wasting my time. So he thought, okay, what I should do now is I should engage in bhakti so that I can attain perfection. But to engage in bhakti, I already have so many responsibilities. So let me first go and hand over my kingdom to my sons. Then I will depart and I will engage in bhakti. So he was thinking like that. Give me some time, I have so many duties, I have pending work to do. So let me hand over all my pending duties to somebody. Then I'll come and I'll engage in this wonderful process that you have described to me. So he was thinking like that and he was ready to go on. He thought, okay, let me first do step by step. But then Narada stops him there because Narada knows that if this man goes back and he's trying to hand over his responsibilities, he's going to get stuck again. He's not the one who's going to come so quickly. So Narada, he tells another story, another allegory. Just now he finished one allegory. Now he goes for allegory 2 because he is realizing Prācīnabarhi is not an easy student. He needs multiple allegories. So he gives one more allegory. He says, a deer is grazing on grass and enjoying with its mate in the garden and this garden is so fragrant. There are aromatic flowers there. But what is happening to this deer? His ears are attracted to the songs of the swarms of bumblebees. So he's getting attracted by the fragrance and the buzzing of the bumblebees, his ears. And then he's moving about, not considering a hungry tiger in front of him. So he's enjoying so much with his mate and the very nice surroundings, and his ear is attracted to that buzz. He's forgetting that there is a tiger in front of him and a hunter is behind him ready to shoot him with arrows. Actually, this is our condition. We are in a situation where there are so many problems, continuous attack, and we are thinking we are very happy in this world. So the meaning of this analogy is that a man is absorbed in household life in the company of his wife, thinking of all his nice enjoyment with his spouse. He enjoys the talks of his wife and children. That is like bumblebees. He's enjoying in household life and he's forgetting that this tiger of time is behind him. It is taking away his lifespan, and the superintendent of death, which is the hunter, is trying to kill him from behind. So he tells one more analogy, saying that don't waste your time. Don't think, you go home and then you hand over your duties. That will be another 1 year, and then you'll forget all that I told you. And so you should do it immediately. So Narada says, you are like the deer. So you give up your household life and take shelter of the Lord. It does that like this. Narada Muni, he enlightens Prācīnabarhi. So now Prācīnabarhi, he's convinced finally, and he thinks to himself, all these years, I had so many different teachers. I had gurus to do this yajna, that yajna. I had so many guides and so many people around me giving me advice. But it appears that all these different teachers in my life have been simply bewildering me. They were just inducing me to do more and more karma. But you are my real well wisher. You are my real spiritual master. And you have cleared all my doubts. But I have one more doubt. I want to know about how this karma is responsible for taking one life after the other. How does transfer of karma to next life happen? What is the proof for this? I want to understand that. So, Narada Muni, because this is important, of course, he should take up to bhakti immediately, but still, it is important for him to get his doubts clarified. So, Narada Muni very patiently answers these lingering doubts that Prācīnabarhi has. So, he says that the gross body is forced to act through the subtle body. After the gross body dies, the subtle body is there to enjoy or suffer. That means once you have shed off your gross body, the subtle body remains, and the soul is carried through the medium of a subtle body to another gross body. Just like in a dream, one may give up the gross body through the subtle body and enter the body of a dog or demigod. Similarly, at death, one gives up the gross body, and with the subtle body, he experiences the results of one's past life. So, when you're dreaming, for example, what is happening? You are closing your eyes and you are in sleep. But in your sleep, you are dreaming, right? So in your dream, maybe you have become a dog, okay? You've become a dog and you are living in somebody's house as a dog and you're eating dog food in your dream. Now, how are you experiencing the dream? The experience of the dream is through your subtle body, because your intelligence and your mind, all that is still functional in one sense. That's why you're able to remember it once you wake up. Okay. So just like how in a dream, one may give up the gross body through the subtle body and enter the body of a dog or a demigod. Similarly, at the time of death, one gives the gross body, and with the subtle body, he experiences the results of the past life. So, what is the reason of next life? Identifying with this gross body, you are performing a particular action. You're thinking, Aham Mahaneti, I am this body, and identifying yourself with the body, you perform an action. When you perform that action, you receive result for that action in your subtle body, and then it is carried to the next body. And again, by that action performed with the certain identity, you're taking birth in the new gross body. So, like that, you are moving from one body to the other because your subtle body is carrying the soul to the next body. So, like that, your karma or the impressions are also getting transferred. So, and how do you understand one's previous life? It is through the action of the 10 senses you understand your previous life. Because when you're based on your actions, one's chitta or consciousness or mental condition is revealed, and one's position in the previous life is understood. So basically, your actions and interactions, these impressions are going from one birth to the other. So you can understand that you have actually had a previous life because you have certain tendencies and certain nature that has been carried on from one birth to the other based on your activities. So every individual is different, and we have so many impressions, and based on that, we behave in particular ways. So, like that, we understand that we have a previous life. So, then how can we perceive the subtle body which is not destroyed when the gross body is destroyed? Just like you have unseen objects in dreams. Sometimes you might get a dream, and in this life, you wouldn't have experienced or you wouldn't have heard of these events. But then these impressions are so strong that they are appearing in dreams. So, that is one proof to understand that you are carrying these impressions from one life to the other. So, it is not possible for anything to appear in the mind which has not been previously experienced in different bodies. So, if you're getting some dream, okay, it is impossible that this dream is coming out of thin air. You must have had this experience. That's why it is coming as a dream. So the mind indicates one's past and future bodies. So the mental composition indicates one's attainment of bodies in accordance with the material nature. So but then how is it that sometimes one sees some impossible things in the dream? Like, for example, you might see, maybe you might see a pig with horns, for example. Okay. Or here in Subodhini, we see an ocean on a mountain top, or stars during the day, or one's own body without a head. See, these are impossible things. A pig with horns is impossible, right? So sometimes we see some funny things in the dream. How is that possible? If everything is an impression from the past, you have definitely seen it. That's why you're seeing it in the dream. Then how come some weird things are also possible in the dream? The answer is that dreams are combination of images. So think like this. You have seen a pig in your life. That is one image. You have seen horns. Generally, you have seen horns, right? Like you get these crowns with horns. You've just seen that. Now, sometimes these images, they just superimpose on each other. So then you see a pig with horns. So the answer is in verse number 67, it is explained the impossible things in dreams that are never experienced or heard in this life have actually been experienced in different times, places, and conditions. These are different images, they are just superimposing on each other. So, under illusion, one combines these separate factors and sees them in dreams. For example, a golden mountain seen in a dream is due to our having experienced golden mountain separately. Pig and horns separately, you see pig with horns, like that. So basically, the idea is that this subtle body, this mind, is a storehouse of different thoughts, experiences, and desires, and they just combine. All these different images. They just combine with each other and juxtapose on each other, and different images are appearing. And some images are very strange, very funny, and images that you have never seen before. So a devotee who is absorbed in Krishna consciousness continuously, he can actually see things as it is, and with the help of the Supreme Lord's grace, he can make everything Krishna conscious. And these people sometimes, to prevent them from taking another birth, because so many images, so many desires, so many impressions are all coming, right? So if there is a desire deep down in your heart, sometimes these images, they come in dreams. That way, it is fulfilled right away. You don't have to take another birth to fulfill that desire. This happens in many devotees' lives. You have a desire deep down. For example, I want to live in a palace. I have that dream, and I have the desire, very strong desire. Now, for me to fulfill that desire, okay, I want to be a princess, I want to be in a palace, and I want to live in a 100-room palace or whatever, with all these nice marble walls and all that. Sometimes when I read Bhagavatam, even I get these desires. Oh, so beautiful. I wish I live in that place. But then what happens to fulfill that desire, if the desire is very strong, I have to take another birth. So then this is going to be never ending. If our mind has so many impressions and so many desires, and if these desires somehow seep in very heavily in our life, then you have to just keep taking birth after birth. But then Krishna is very merciful. So in verse number 69, he says that but for a devotee, sometimes these desires itself, they appear in dreams. That way you have the experience of living it. Like I was mentioning, if I have the desire of living in a palace, if I get it in a dream that I'm living in this palace, and you experience that experience, there is a completion. You don't have to take birth again to experience that. That way, Krishna is very merciful. He will give that and he'll make us experience that. So, our existence in this world is because of the false identification. And once false identification, this mameti bhava, that is aham mameti, when you're thinking in terms of I and mine, this whole thing exists as long as the subtle body exists. Okay, So that means till you get liberated, till you shed your gross and subtle body, this false identification will just keep continuing. The subtle body is not destroyed when the senses are inactive. That means when you're sleeping, or when you are fainting, or when you have grief. Sometimes you have, you out of intense grief, you forget the surroundings. Sometimes you, even at the time of death also, even in high temperature also, at all states, the subtle body does not cease to exist. All the 10 senses and the mind, they are very, very attractive. They are very active in the youth. But then in the womb of a mother, they're somewhat covered. Prabhupada has given this example. He says, you put a small baby and throw him in the, put him in the cold air. Actually, his senses are not very well developed. So he will not feel intense chillness in one sense. Prabhupada says this. I've not experienced that. Maybe mothers will know like how babies are. We have that concern, oh, this is a baby, he's very sensitive, we have to take care of the baby, But basically, their senses are not very fully developed. They have undeveloped senses. But then as the body grows, actually the senses will become more and more developed. That's why when the body grows, also we become more and more sensitive to many, many things. So one enjoys objects in a dream though the objects are not present. Similarly, the samsara doesn't cease for a person who's attached to sense objects. Like during childhood, you have undeveloped senses, and in deep sleep, you have inactive senses. So these senses are there, but they may be inactive. But in an inactive senses doesn't indicate a liberated state. Okay. So basically, we should understand that as long as we have the body, we have the senses, and as long as we have the gross body and the subtle body, our senses are still active. That is the underlying point. Now, what is really the subtle body? What is the definition of a subtle body? It is the form which consists of the 5 pranas, 5 airs. We saw that, right? Prana, Pana, Vyana, Udana, Samana, and the 3 gunas, which is furnished with 16 transformations, which is the 10 senses, 5 sense objects, and mind, and which is endowed with consciousness, is called a subtle body. This is a very detailed definition of subtle body. Basically, subtle body includes mind, intelligence, false ego is the answer we know. But if you want to know in great detail, then it consists of 5 pranas, 3 gunas, furnished with 16 transformations of 10 senses, 5 senses, sense objects, and the mind. And it is also endowed with consciousness. This totality is called as the subtle body. So by the subtle body, the jiva accepts gross bodies and gives them up and experiences happiness, lamentation, fear, grief, happiness, and so on. And there's a very beautiful analogy that is explained in verses 76 and 77. And that is about the transmigration of the soul from one body to the other, which is the caterpillar analogy. Very famous analogy. Srila Prabhupada also quotes this in many places. It comes from Bhagavatam. So a caterpillar will not give up one leaf before transferring itself to the next. Similarly, the jiva will not give up his previous identity even while dying or until he has accepted another body by firmly holding on to his karmas. So like this, the mind, which is the reservoir of all desires, is the cause of this repeated birth and death. That's what Krishna is telling in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also, right? Antakale chamameva smaran mukta kalevaram, and then yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram. So it is the mind. It is the mind that is responsible for what you're going to take, what kind of body you're going to acquire in your next birth. So how does the mind become the cause of samsara? When we have desires for enjoyment, we perform material activities under ignorance. And when we are performing these material activities under ignorance, we are creating further desires for sense enjoyment. So the cause of samsara is thinking of sense gratification. You begin to perform activities under ignorance and you become entrapped with karma. Therefore, you should, again, he comes back to the same point. You should worship the Lord. You have to counteract this ignorance. And the Supreme Lord is beyond this ignorance. He is the creator, maintainer, and destroyer of this entire universe. So he is much beyond that. So when you worship the Supreme Lord, the spell of ignorance will be removed from you. So then Narada Muni, like this, he enlightened Prācīnabarhi and he goes back to Siddhaloka. And eventually, after this final doubt clearing session, Prācīnabarhi, he desires to retire. So quickly, he didn't take much time. Quickly, he left orders with his ministers. He didn't go and personally do all the work, but he left orders with his ministers that his sons should protect the citizens. Who are Prācīnabarhi's sons? It is the Prachetas. Then he goes home he left home, and he goes to Kapilashram. And when Prācīnabarhi was induced by Nārada to leave home and take to devotional service, the Prachetas had not yet returned from their austerities. So an instruction was left for them. Okay. Now, if Prācīnabarhi had decided to wait for the Prachetas to come back, then his time would be ticking. That's the reason Nārada quickly tells him the deer analogy, clarifies his doubts, and tells him to go to Kapilashram and perform the devotional service. So being free from material association and constantly engaged in loving service of Krishna, Prācīnabarhi, he attains a spiritual position and he attains qualitative oneness with the Lord. That means he becomes completely spiritual. So there is a Phalashruti for this entire section. When you hear this chapter, you get this whole thing. It liberates one from the subtle body, sanctifies the material world, purifies the jiva's heart, liberates him from bondage, elevates him to the spiritual world, relieves him from bodily conception, and clears his doubt about next life. So if you read this chapter thoroughly, not like what I did today, but if you read it thoroughly, then all this Phalashruti is guaranteed. That's it. Hare Krishna. Thank you all so much for your attention. I hope I didn't put anyone to sleep.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much. And everybody here, Mataji does not know that she had to give the class only 1 minute before she knows that she had to give the class, but still she gave such a nice class. So Mataji, thank you so much. You're walking Bhagavatam. You can give class anytime, even if I wake up you in the night. Mataji, some speaker is not coming in India, then you still give class there also. Thank you so much, Mataji, for such a beautiful class.
I'll do if there is Subodhini, there are slides and there are devotees like you all to help me. Then I do.
Very cool. Very nice, Mataji. So sweet class. You've given very nice, realizations also in between. Thank you so much, Mataji. Very, very grateful to you. You have summarized the previous chapters as that PPT has all the chapters. Even it has 30th chapter. You could have finished that one also. It's very nice, Mataji. Yeah, thank you so much. We'll open for the realizations and questions. Anybody would like to ask, they can go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. As Vinita Mataji said, you are really walking Bhagavad. You can speak anytime, spontaneously. It was very wonderful. I have one question.
I know you asked about the subtle body. Yeah, go ahead.
No, not about the subtle body. Definitely not. I don't want any controversy.
Because I was very careful in how I was saying it, but Bhagavatam does say about, okay, let's have this separate. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So my question is about how Nārada Muni told Prācīnabarhi about this deer allegory story that you have to leave right now. And Parishad was still thinking that I have responsibilities to take care. How can I just leave the kingdom? So how can we understand this when we try to imbibe in our life? Should we look on to the responsibilities that we still have? Or should we just leave? Wouldn't be an artificial renunciation, or how should we take it?
So when we see the story of Khatwanga, when we see the story of this Prācīnabarhi himself, we see that the responsibility per se was not given up. Even Maharaj Katwanga, he had like one muhurta to live, right? He gave all the responsibility, he gave the instructions, he gave the responsibility of the kingdom to his sons. He allotted the work, and then in the last minutes, he concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord and he attained perfection. Even this Prācīnabarhi, Narada's point was you don't have to wait for your sons to come back after meditation. You'll forget everything. But Prācīnabarhi also, he did not fail in his duty. He left the instructions what to do with his ministers so that once the Prachetas return, they can execute their duties. So that should be our mood. Yes, we have to perform our duties, but we should not get entangled in that performance of duty and give full concentration there. That is also important. Do it diligently, do it in the minimum time we have, and focus on Krishna consciousness. Okay, Mataji?
Yeah, that makes sense, because otherwise it will be an artificial renunciation.
Yes,
Just
it will be
renunciing
very
everything.
artificial. And actually, our mind will be there only. Our mind won't be in Krishna consciousness. We'll be worried, okay, I'm not doing my duty. I'm not doing my duty. I have so many things left. I have so many things left. That will engulf your consciousness. Better get it done quickly and then concentrate on this.
Thank you, Mata. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Okay, any other questions?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Dandat Pranam. Wow, it's just so amazing that you can just directly speak on this very complex philosophy and with so many analogies. So those analogies are very helpful. And I really, I mean, it was mind-boggling to hear about what happens in our dreams. So you talked about when we desire things and when we see things, those sometimes get manifested in our dreams. So that's material desires. Does it work the same way for our spiritual desires also? Okay, you want to go see Vrindavan Dham, you've never seen it, and then you desire for it, and then it just comes in your dream and that's it. You don't get to go. Is that how it works, or?
It's fine if it works that way too. See, the idea of fulfilling your material desires through dreams is so that you don't have to take a birth to experience it.
Right.
Now, when it is spiritual desire, why not take multiple births? So, meaning you
Right.
can go to Bhauma Vrindavan and you can experience Vrindavan. Even if you get it in the dream, there is no harm. You will still get whatever you have to experience before you attain perfection. It's not applicable per se for spiritual desires, but there's no harm. I mean, we can have multiple spiritual experiences in dreams, in person, everywhere. Yeah. So dreams are also indications. It's not just fulfilling your experiences, something. I mean, fulfilling your desires to experience something. These are also indications. Like we know stories of many people before giving up their body. They have seen Vrindavan Dham, they have seen Radha Krishna. There's so many stories of practicing devotees and others. They get to have some experiences of their spiritual master. So these spiritual dreams, they're very nice. They are encouraging our bhakti lata. So it's very nice.
Thank you, Mataji. I didn't follow what the conversation. I mean, probably there is a backstory to the conversation between you and Kirtida Mataji on the subtle body. So,
yeah, this is you can actually keep it as an open-ended question. Whether the subtle body is also transferred to the next body. I'll keep the controversy open for everybody. So you know what we are talking about now.
Yes, yeah, okay.
Okay, but this chapter of Bhagavatam leans towards that first idea. So
that subtle body definitely goes with okay.
At least the translation, maybe we are not Sanskrit scholars, so at least the translation.
So portion of the Bhagavatam does it say that? I mean, of course, when at some point we go to the spiritual world, that time we leave the subtle body also, right? Yeah, but as long as we are in this cycle of birth and death, he would continue to have it, but Mataji says that we wouldn't, right? Okay, got it.
Mataji doesn't say anything. Poor Mataji.
Sorry about that, Kirtida Mataji. Didn't want to put you.
Yeah, don't put me into trouble, please.
I don't get into any opinion. Don't.
No.
Yeah.
My bad. Okay, thank you so much. So
Okay,
I'm
thank-
glad that you can give such a spontaneous class. Sorry, Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much for such a beautiful, spontaneous class. As usual, all your spontaneous classes are very wonderful. Thank you
And
so much, Mataji.
when it's Bhakti Sangha, she's there. Doesn't matter whether she's busy or not. Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah, I was telling her because every week, otherwise she's giving other places classes. When she is available, then why she don't need to say no for the class. If you don't have any other class, come, I asked, then she came. Thank you so much for accepting that request, Mataji. Because
No.
I've seen you have been long, yeah. 418 something you gave the class. The last class was, now you came again. It was so long time, yeah. Thank you so much, Mataji. I would like to offer my obeisances to you and all the Vaishnavas assembled on the call. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhyevacha patidanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah ananta koti vaishnavrind ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Her Grace Preethi Vilasini Mataji ki jai.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. There are another 2 chapters, I guess, right, Mataji? Is that correct? Or 1 chapter? 2 chapters, I think.
2 chapters, huh? I have it in my PowerPoint. I think it says 30. Till 31. Yeah, chapter 30.
Yeah, 2 more chapters and then we'll be having closing of this. A break, little break.
Break.
Yeah, break. Tea, coffee break. Hare Krishna.